San Diego's long-term solution for homelessness will include jobs. The move today that will help more people get off the streets and into the workforce.
If I could tell you that I can give you something that'll give you a third less chance of getting the flu, then definitely, you should take it.
The flu season shows no signs of slowing down in San Diego. The key change that spells out relief to county health leaders.
Certainly finding an elegant solution to getting rid of the grain is like the holy grail.
Toasting a special partnership between San Diego beer makers and cows. The benefits of their beer-to-farm relationship. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Dozens of homeless people in San Diego will soon be connected with job opportunities. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy tells us city officials plan to create a pilot program to help 100 people find employment and stay off the streets.
A San Diego City Council Homelessness Committee voted to use its rapid rehousing program to connect people with long-term employment. The rehousing program provides rent deposits and temporary financial assistance to families experiencing homelessness. Nationwide, this program has a 90% success rate. In Los Angeles, it's 73% successful. But in San Diego, only about half the people assisted end up staying in their homes. The other half end up back on the streets. Councilmember Chris Ward says assisting people in landing jobs and supporting them for long-term success will improve San Diego's poor rehousing performance.
We have opportunities that we could be able to better use some of our entry-level and budgeted positions to be able to possibly give a higher functioning, employable homeless individual a job. And we know that housing is difficult, and that's one piece of the puzzle, but workforce opportunities, employment is also a major barrier for those who are homeless.
The San Diego Workforce Partnership and the Regional Task Force on the Homeless will help design the pilot program. They say more details will be provided in June. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
A San Diego man who offered hope to homeless people one water bottle at a time has died. David Ross was known as the Waterman. For years, he handed out hundreds of bottles each day to the homeless, along with a hug and a kind word. City council members ended today's meeting in his honor. Councilman Chris Ward said Ross helped establish San Diego's first homeless storage facility. Ross was 83 years old. California's governor has yet to decide if National Guard troops will be sent to the border at the request of President Trump. California is the only border state that hasn't already sent troops or indicated it's planning to do so. Governor Jerry Brown has yet to make any public comment on the request. Today, a spokesperson said the issue is still under review. Republican governors in Arizona and Texas have already sent National Guard personnel to help with border security. San Diego's Paramedic Training Institute just graduated its first class of students. All are local firefighters learning a new skill that will help them better serve the community. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman was at today's ceremony.
16 San Diego firefighters can now call themselves paramedics too. That ceremony's wrapping up right behind me here on the deck of the USS Midway Museum. Earlier on the deck of the Midway, San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer congratulated the graduates of the city's new Paramedic Training Institute. Last July, this group of firefighters started the class, and after 8 months, they've completed over 1,000 hours of training in the classroom and clinical experience at local hospitals. This is a unique program for the city. Before, city firefighters would have to pay to go to school to become a paramedic, but now the city has its own program where they can provide their own training. Today, the graduates were honored by outgoing Fire Chief Brian Fennessy. Fennessy has accepted a job as the Fire Chief of the Orange County Fire Authority. Last Friday was his last day on the job, and today was his last public appearance.
Today is the last day I get to wear this uniform. The Paramedic Institute graduation we're about to have is the last official duty that I'll have. So everything is turning into the last, and so it's, you know, it's surreal. It's a little bit bittersweet. But I'm excited about the next opportunity.
Even though Fennessy's final day in the office was last week, he'll be on city payroll until this Friday. Then he starts his new job in Orange County next week. A city spokesman says a search for a new fire chief is still underway. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
San Diego Assemblyman Todd Gloria joined gun control advocates on the steps of the state capitol today. Gloria is trying to pass a bill that would add more rules for those trying to get a concealed carry weapons permit. One of the new requirements would be 8 hours of training on how to use and store a gun.
Because when people are not trained appropriately, bad things happen. Whether that's in the use of the weapon or, importantly, in securing that weapon, we must demand that people know what they're doing, prove it before they're given the permit to carry, and that we hold people accountable.
Under current California law, no minimum training standard exists. Firearm advocates say the bill is unnecessary and that most permit holders are gun owners who have already gone through extensive training. A San Diego Unified School District Committee will begin holding town hall meetings this week on whether to change school board elections. KPBS education reporter Megan Burke says the issue could wind up on the November ballot.
The school board established the committee after 4 citizens groups tried to get an initiative on the June ballot. They wanted to set term limits for San Diego Unified trustees and move to a system where voters in local districts, not the city at large, decide on their school board representatives. The city council, which oversees school board elections, rejected those proposals in January and instead adopted a school board plan to gather community input on the matter. A committee of private citizens will begin that work Wednesday at Mira Mesa High School. It will host 4 more town halls this month and will put out an online survey. The board itself is expected to decide next month whether to pursue a November ballot initiative. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
Temperatures jumped into the 80s and 90s in parts of San Diego County today. Aaron Calandra has details on how long the spring warm-up will last in tonight's forecast.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed your day. The weather was pretty great, and it's going to stay nice for the next couple of days. But toward the end of the week, we are going to see some changes. Right now, not much happening here on the satellite and radar. Tonight, it's going to be a pretty nice night. 60 degrees, mainly clear, very pleasant. In the interior areas, Ramona 50 degrees, Alpine 52, Chula Vista coming in at 55. Further to the east, in Borrego Springs 63, and Mount Laguna a chilly 47 degrees. Notice there's a lot going on here over the ocean off the coast, and that's not going to have a direct impact on us yet. It is going to bring some rain further to the north, and that's going to slowly sag down here to the south, and we could see just a few showers on Thursday. But for now, on Tuesday, it's looking pretty great. High pressure in place, lots of sunshine. Temperatures, they're going to be on the rise, slightly above average. So San Diego at 76, we should be in the upper 60s for our high this time of year, so that's warm. In Poway 89, Oceanside 76, Mount Laguna at 74, and Alpine 87 degrees. Everyone will have plenty of sunshine. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, well, it's going to be nice. Thursday's when you will see a change, though. That's when we could see some brief light showers in places. Most people will stay dry, but it's also going to be a bit on the windy side, and temperatures are going to drop slightly down to 66 degrees. By Friday, it's going to be sunny and nice, and by Saturday, we're back up into the 80s, well above average. Again, in the interior areas, it's going to become a bit windy on Thursday. Temperatures drop from 89 on Tuesday down to 67 on Thursday, and then we rebound back to the 80s for the weekend. And in the mountains, again, it's going to be very windy, kind of a day where 2 hands on the steering wheel might be needed through the passes there on Thursday. And chilly, too, 56 degrees. It will warm up with some sunshine by the weekend. And look at the deserts. Wow, we're talking nearly 100 degrees already. That's going to be on Tuesday. Thursday, we drop down to 80 with those cooler temperatures, and then we rebound back up to the 80s by the weekend. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Ebony, back to you.
People who live in San Diego County may have to pay more for their water bill. As Eric Anderson reports, it all comes down to what happens with a major water tunnel project near Sacramento.
The Metropolitan Water District's decision to consider a smaller option to move water under the Sacramento Delta could end up being more expensive to local water users. Now, the water wholesaler failed to cultivate financial support for a 2-tunnel plan from the state's agricultural water users. Fewer financial partners means there's a bigger commitment from the Met, which means San Diego County residents will pay more. San Diego County Water Authority briefing documents obtained by KPBS indicate that local water users could pay as little as 30 cents to $1 more a month if the project costs are tacked onto the cost of water from MWD. But if the costs are factored into the fee that MWD charges for moving water through its system, the cost could add $6.50 to $23 a month onto local bills. The local water authority has seats on Metropolitan's board, but not enough votes to block the project. The Met will decide which plan to back at a Tuesday meeting. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
You might not think the worlds of craft beer and farming have much in common, but they actually rely on each other. Farm animals eat the grain produced during the brewing process, but with more breweries and fewer farms in San Diego, KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser shows us how making that connection is a growing challenge.
Here's my barley silo, and it holds about 60,000 pounds of malted barley.
The beer brewing process kicks off at around 5 a.m. at Mike Hess Brewing in North Park.
From here, the malted barley gets augured into the brewery all the way to the front of the building where we begin our brewing process.
They're creating Hess's craft beers, from an IPA to a darker stout or porter. But brewing also produces waste, and a lot of it. It's called spent grain, and founder Mike Hess says they make about 20,000 pounds a week.
It became more and more tedious to get rid of the grain, even in the little brewery, but we always managed to find friends who could take it. But when we got here, we knew that we would need to come up with a different solution.
When Hess first started brewing a decade ago, his batches were so small that he could give a few buckets of grain to a friend who would feed it to her chickens. But as his operation grew, he needed something bigger.
Certainly finding an elegant solution to getting rid of the grain is like the holy grail. If you're brewing, you've got waste every single time you brew in the form of a large, wet mass.
He could just throw it away, but that would be a lot of waste to get rid of every week. And besides, not everyone thinks it's waste.
That's it.
At Frank Conine Dairy near Escondido, the spent grain is a regular part of all 800 cows' daily diet.
We're part of a dying breed. There's not a whole lot of dairies or animal agriculture left in San Diego County.
Conine grew up on the farm and took it over from his father. He collects grain from 13 local breweries.
And so that's one of the ways that we've worked to help mitigate rising feed costs and make ourselves a little bit more economical, but also to be socially responsible, to be part of the community and helping be part of the solution of recycling.
Almost every day, Conine's trucks head out to pick up the grain bins from the breweries. They bring it back to the farm where it's mixed with leftover bread from local bakeries, fruit pulp from local juice companies, and grass. The brewery grain is high in protein, he says, which helps the cows make more milk.
I often view my cows as they're kind of Olympic athletes. I am asking them to optimize their performance, and the only way I'm going to optimize their performance is by giving them the best diet possible.
But Conine only likes to pick up grain from bigger breweries. They have to make enough grain for it to be worth the trip. That doesn't include Alta Brewing, which just opened last year and produces about 1,500 pounds of spent grain a month. Owner Brett Stamf recently found a small farm to take his grain. Before that,
I have to take a trip up to Miramar and, of course, pay for it. The farmer comes and picks it up, and I just give it to him.
Now that there's so many more breweries than farms in San Diego County, finding someone to take your spent grain can be a challenge for beer brewers just getting started. But Stamf says it's important to make the grain into something usable.
It helps a guy out. It goes to something that, I don't know how, I understand it has a meaning.
Back at the dairy farm, Frank Conine says the spent grain does help him out by decreasing costs. But he also says he's helping out breweries too by recycling their waste.
You're merging an urban center with animal agriculture and how there is a need for both to coexist.
Conine says, as far as he can tell, the cows don't have a preference of IPAs to stouts. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
California Attorney General Javier Becerra says the state has filed a motion to intervene in a lawsuit that seeks to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. That lawsuit was filed by Texas and 19 other states in late February. The suit claims because Congress did away with the individual mandate penalty, the ACA is unconstitutional. Becerra says the lawsuit is dangerous and legally unsound.
We're taking this action to protect the health and financial security of millions of people in our country, as well as the billions of dollars of federal funds that go to our states to make sure that we can afford the health care that our families need.
Becerra says the sole purpose of the Texas-led challenge is to strip Americans of their health care. California is joined by 15 other states in its attempt to intervene in the federal lawsuit. San Diego's flu season is usually over by now, but this season has been anything but normal. Hundreds of new cases are being reported. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has a story.
This flu season, a record 20,000 influenza cases and 326 related deaths have been confirmed.
No one knows really why this season is so much more severe than other seasons.
Deputy Public Health Officer Dr. Sayon Thihaloli-Pavin says San Diego's flu season typically ends by March. Now in April, the county's latest report shows nearly 250 new cases and 7 more deaths.
Especially earlier on, the predominant strain of flu was one that is more deadlier, and that was the H3N2 strain. Now, currently, we're glad that the predominant strain is a influenza type B, or a B strain, which is less likely to result in hospitalizations and deaths.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this year's flu vaccine has been around 35% effective.
If I could tell you that I can give you something that'll give you a third less chance of getting the flu, then definitely, you should take it.
Health officials say they aren't sure when this flu season will end. Meantime, the County Board of Supervisors ended the local hepatitis A health emergency in January, but the outbreak is still not over.
We've seen about 9 cases this year so far, I believe, and unfortunately mostly centralized around North County area.
During the peak of the outbreak, San Diego was averaging around 80 Hep A cases a month. Since the outbreak started in November 2016, 20 people have died and 587 cases have been confirmed. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
For the first time, a serving U.S. senator has given birth. Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois has announced the arrival of her second daughter. Since announcing her pregnancy, she's been working to change Senate rules to allow her to bring her baby onto the Senate floor while in session. Duckworth says, "I'm hardly alone or unique as a working parent, and my children only make me more committed to doing my job and standing up for hardworking families everywhere." From her WikiLeaks testimonials to her gender transition, Chelsea Manning is no stranger to controversy. In 2013, she was sentenced to 35 years in a military prison for leaking classified information to WikiLeaks about the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. She was released in 2017 by President Obama. Tonight, she will be at SDSU, just one of her many stops as she travels the country as a public speaker. Manning spoke with KPBS Midday Edition, but she would not answer questions about her connection to WikiLeaks. The CIA and FBI have linked that partnership to the Russian government.
These are nefarious institutions that are trying to control everything about society, and we're not doing anything about that. I mean, I want to talk about the surveillance state that we've built. I want to talk about the fact that we're deporting more people than we've ever deported before. I want to talk about the fact that we're essentially ramping up for an ethnic cleansing across America.
Manning is also running against Senator Ben Cardin in Maryland's Democratic Party. To listen to the entire interview, listen to the Midday podcast. Social media, politics, and cybersecurity will converge this week on Capitol Hill. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg visited congressional offices today. He will testify in a hearing tomorrow on the company's ties to Cambridge Analytica. Facebook shared the personal information of millions of users with the data analytics firm, which was working with the Trump presidential campaign in 2016. Here are comments from Florida Senator Bill Nelson, who met with Zuckerberg today, and President Trump's new director of the National Economic Council, Larry Kudlow.
We talked about the future and just how this platform, indeed social media, can be used to undermine our country's institutions. My sense is that he takes it seriously because he knows that there is going to be a hard look at regulation. If it's not his site, someone else can be misused for people who are trying to do us harm. And I believe he understands that regulation could be right around the corner.
Larry, let me ask you, Mark Zuckerberg goes to the Hill this week to testify.
Yeah.
Does the administration feel that Facebook should be regulated?
Is he going to wear a suit and tie? A clean white shirt?
No clue.
Is that your biggest gripe? That's my biggest question.
Do you think Facebook
is he going to behave like an adult as a major corporate leader, or give me this phony baloney? What is it? Hoodies and dungarees and what is that kind of thing?
You don't think much of Mark Zuckerberg?
I think I could help him clean up his act.
Zuckerberg has released the prepared remarks he will deliver to Congress. Part of it reads, "We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. It was my mistake, and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here." KPBS Radio will carry Zuckerberg's hearing tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Cybersecurity is a concern not just on our social networks, but on our roads. SciTech Now anchor Hari Srinivasan spoke with NYU professor about the ways hackers are targeting cars.
People want cars to help them do little things that are, otherwise inconveniences. And some people are really interested in cars driving themselves, but the more computers you put into a car, the more points of vulnerability we have.
Yeah, certainly as these systems get more and more complex, there are more and more opportunities for hackers. Now, it's not actually clear whether having cars that drive themselves or have advanced safety systems are actually more risk or at less risk. Because effectively anything an attacker can do with a car, they can probably do today with a car or with a car that doesn't have those safety systems in it. And so those safety systems may actually reduce risk in some ways because they may be fighting against the attacker who wants to go and drive the car into a crowd of pedestrians or things like that.
It used to be the stuff of sci-fi, but we've seen a couple of kind of journalists go out there and do test cases and have the cars sort of take over where they're trying to control it and they no longer have control, or at least the car shuts down in a very inopportune place. I mean, this is the stuff that people fear, right? And this is a pretty significant hurdle, I would think, in people adopting the next generation of vehicles.
It's a big challenge. There are a lot of problems in that when you go and you get sold a car, that car is supposed to be operational and work well and not have any sort of major hardware-based updates, at least you don't expect, over an extended period of time, 20, 30 years, the lifetime of a car. And now there's a lot of things that have been out there and deployed that were made by vendors when maybe security wasn't a primary concern back when those cars were first came off the assembly line.
So how do hackers get into our cars?
Well, there's actually a surprising number of different wireless networks that connect your car to a modern car that you don't necessarily think about. There's some things you might think a little bit about, such as the GPS or OnStar style units. Sure. And of course, there's the door locks and other things like that can go over shorter wave radio. But there's also things that you don't really think about. So some researchers at the University of Washington and UCSD showed that they could go and actually over the radio go and get on a car's network, because you know how you're in the car listening to your radio and it plays the name of the station and the song and everything?
Sure.
That's a little computer inside your radio that's showing that. And, you know, like other computers, it might have bugs in it. And if you can exploit that, you can actually do something like, for instance, potentially play something that then takes over those radios and gets an attacker on that network, disables brakes or does other things like that.
So it's one little computer that has a vulnerability that gives the hacker access to other computers that are controlling other systems in the car.
Right, yeah. The car is basically a network of very, very weak computers that are all stuck together doing things, and there's not any real security on that network.
Is there an effort by, say, everyone from Ford and Chrysler and GM in the United States to Toyota and Honda and everywhere else, all the major manufacturers, have they kind of gotten around a kitchen table and said, okay, or a conference room table and said, here's the thing, let's at least agree on this because it's going to be very important to all our consumers, not just our particular brands?
Well, one of the things that I've been doing in my research is working on a way to securely distribute over-the-air updates within vehicles. And I don't want to name individual companies or others, but I will say that over 3/4 of the cars on the road in the U.S. had representatives from those companies in our meetings. And you can draw whatever conclusions you want about that, but we have substantial vendor presence and actually have had substantial adoption by a lot of different communities because there is this real knowledge that these companies need to do something about security now. If they don't, there's going to be, you know, very scary times ahead of us.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/Evening Edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.